I'll just admit it, on the right, have spent the last 80 years defending dropping nuclear weapons on civilians. Like, are you joking?
Right.
That's just like prima facie evil.
Tucker Carlson recently went on Joe Rogan, and the things that Tucker Carlson said to Joe Rogan caused an absolute meltdown with members of the Daily Wire. Also sparked some controversy with some other people going after the members of the Daily Wire for what they said. As you can see, this tweet here from Jeremy Boring says people who deny the moon landing or suggest America is evil for its use of atomic weapons against Imperial Japan, or who say George Bush was behind 9/11 actually hate this country. This prompted responses from people like Lauren Chen, from Patrick Bet-David, and even people like Candace Owens. But let's check out what actually was said from Tucker Carlson to Joe Rogan to spark all of these meltdowns from members of the Daily Wire like Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring, and then also sparked the responses from people like Patrick Bet-David and Candace Owens. Let's check out this clip here from the Joe Rogan Experience.
Well, you could say the same about the atomic bomb, right?
Yes, you could.
And you could say that we have to develop it like Oppenheimer felt before the Nazis did.
I love that. How'd that work? How'd that work?
Well,
I love, by the way, that people on my side, I'll just admit it, on the right, have spent the last 80 years defending dropping nuclear weapons on civilians. Like, are you joking?
Right.
That's just like prima facie evil.
Let me know in the comments, how do you feel about this? This was definitely a hot topic on Twitter, and it's still an ongoing argument with the Daily Wire members versus basically everybody else. Let me know in the comments how you feel about it. It's obviously a very, very complicated situation. I'm of the mind of, like, obviously I don't want any wars to happen. I don't want any innocent people to die, especially at the expense of my own tax dollars, like feeling like I pay for the innocent people dying. It's never a good feeling, and I never want that to happen. At the same time, though, it's like innocent people are going to die anyway. So did we end up saving lives? Is that propaganda because we ended up winning and the victors end up writing the history? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. How do you feel about, the use of atomic weapons in Japan during that time? Let's get back to this clip here from the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah. If you can't, if we hadn't done that, then this, that, the other thing, that was actually a great savings. Like, no, it's wrong to drop nuclear weapons on people. And if you find yourself arguing that it's a good thing to drop nuclear weapons on people, then you are evil. Like, it's not a tough one, right? It's not a hard call for you. It's not a hard call for me. So with that in mind, like, why would you want nuclear weapons? It's like just a mindless, childish sort of intellectual exercise to justify, like, oh no, it's really good because someone else will get it. How about no? How about like spending all of your effort to prevent this from happening? Would you kill baby Hitler, famously?
Right.
So I don't know why we're sitting back and allowing this to happen if we really believe it will extinguish the human race or enslave the human race. Like,
I have to agree. And I believe they're referring to AI right here. I have to fully agree. And I know that's going to piss a lot of people off, but I agree with what Tucker Carlson's saying to Joe Rogan here. Like, I'm of the mind of, like, all of these wars, like the Ukraine war, the Middle East war, all of these things. But the people of America, the citizens of America, shouldn't be taking certain sides and cheering on one side whenever they go and bomb innocents of another country and say, yeah, that's what you get for attacking this other country that isn't even us and frankly don't even like us that much, but we're supposed to be allies in some way. So yeah, that's what you get for attacking us. You get to have a bunch of your innocent civilians die. It's like, look, it's one thing to say that this is just an outcome of war. This just happens. This just it's the ugly reality of war. It's one thing to say that. It's a whole other thing to celebrate whenever these atrocities happen, whenever innocent people are dying. It's a whole other thing to celebrate it, man. If you're one of those people that celebrate it, then I have to agree with Tucker Carlson here and Joe Rogan that you're probably evil. There's also another clip here that also set off Jeremy Boring and the rest of the Daily Wire members. And then we'll get into the actual meltdowns from the Daily Wire right after this one. This one is from Viva Frey. Says, provide the timestamp to the part of the podcast where Tucker Carlson suggested to Joe Rogan that Bush orchestrated the 9/11 attacks. Jeremy Boring, it's not critical thinking to strawman and put words in your adversary's mouth. It's actually a disingenuous tactic adopted by the left and mainstream media. And if you don't know what Viva Frey is talking about right here, Tucker Carlson and the Daily Wire actually went at each other. More specifically, Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson had an argument a while back where I don't think they ever sat down face to face or directly spoke to each other, which is unfortunate. I wish that would have happened, but they kind of went back and forth on podcast clips. Like Ben Shapiro would react to something that Tucker said, and then Tucker would respond to Ben Shapiro's response, and they kind of went back and forth for a while. So Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire, they don't like Tucker Carlson very much. So it's not a surprise that they try to twist Tucker Carlson's words whenever he goes on Joe Rogan and exposes a lot of their dumb talking points. Let's check out this other clip here from the Joe Rogan Experience.
If you'd played that Alex Jones clip for me in 1999, I would have been, and I did see Alex Jones clips in 1999. And then in later years where he was talking about Building 7, and I was very offended. I was like outraged that he would be suggesting that there was something about 9/11 that wasn't above board, that there were, things we didn't know that were being hidden from us. And I was like mad at Alex Jones for saying that. I remember that really well. How dare you?
The Building 7 one is wild.
Well, it is why. It is why. I mean, I have all I know is 21. I don't even know what year it is. 23 years? Could it really be 23 years after 9/11? 23 years later. What's the justification for classifying any document around 9/11? There's no justification.
Well, the same justification in classifying the documents about the Kennedy assassination.
Well, exactly. 61 years later.
Yeah, or releasing the COVID vaccine data 75 years later.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's, of course, look, secrecy is different from privacy.
If you enjoy content like this, and make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel, it really does help me out a ton. Let's get back to the video.
Privacy is necessary for the dignity of this. Why you've got a door in the bathroom in your bedroom, right? You need privacy, you need private thoughts. We have no privacy whatsoever. None. No privacy at all. Thanks to the iPhone and government spying on us all. So there's no privacy, but there's massive secrecy. Secrecy is different. Secrecy abets lying. The only reason to have secrecy is in order to do something that you're ashamed of other people knowing about. That's immoral and probably illegal. And there's more secrecy than ever. And that means that there's more lying than ever. There are more crimes being committed than ever. That's the surest sign of it. Why are there 1 billion classified federal documents in a so-called democracy? Because they're lying to us. That's why. But 9/11, what is the justification for that? I don't know the answer. I really don't know the answer, but there is one. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's not methods and sources. You think it's methods and sources? Trying to protect their Saudi sources? I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But anyway, let's get into the response that this prompted from the Daily Wire, the CEO of the Daily Wire, and also Ben Shapiro, and many, many others who were very outraged at the things that Tucker Carlson was saying to Joe Rogan for some odd reason, even though these things are said all the time by so many different people. But yet when Tucker Carlson goes on Joe Rogan, the biggest platform in the world, and says it, that makes Jeremy Boring very, very angry. And you can see the ratio in this tweet is not in Jeremy Boring's favor too much. So here's a tweet from the Daily Wire CEO. Jeremy Boring says, people who deny the moon landing or suggest America is evil for its use of atomic weapons against Imperial Japan, or who say that George Bush was behind 9/11, actually hate this country. And if you think this is a coincidence, you are completely wrong. I mean, this was tweeted out, I think, a day after the Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan Experience episode dropped. It's not a coincidence. Lauren Chen responded to this tweet and said, if you question the government, you hate your country. That's basically what Jeremy Boring is saying there. Ryan Dawson, and you have to tread lightly here, says, we went to the moon. Nuking cities was wrong and unnecessary. 9/11 was done by Al-Qaeda, but Al-Qaeda works for the same people as ISIS, the Daily Wire's favorite state, if you catch his drift there. This person, I don't know who this is exactly, but I love this tweet. Hate this country? No. Hate neocons like you? Absolutely. I 100% agree. Not a big fan of the Daily Wire anymore. I think they're just a business, they're just trying to generate revenue. They're trying to appeal to the mainstream, the boomer conservatives, which is fine. If it's just a business to them, but to a lot of us, it's more than just a business. We're trying to actually, further a movement. We're trying to actually at least save what we can of the country, and the Daily Wire is definitely not interested in that. Patrick Bet David actually responded to this tweet from Jeremy Boring, quote tweeted him and said, Jeremy, isn't the entire premise of being a critical thinker to question things? Some of the best podcasters and influencers are those who ask questions no one else is asking. Being anti-establishment is to question the establishment's motive. No? And then Jeremy Boring responded to Patrick Bet David there and says, it is not critical thinking to say that America never landed on the moon or that George W. Bush orchestrated the 9/11 attacks. It is a rejection of critical thinking. And then this person makes a great point. Where did the nuking of innocent civilians part go? Because he did, Tucker Carlson mentioned that. And then Jeremy Boring also tweeted out that if you think that it was immoral to do that, then you're wrong. All this other stuff that he was saying. And then he magically disappears that part from this follow-up tweet to Patrick Bet David. Jeremy says, that is a moral question. Critical thinking is a different topic altogether. And then Patrick Bet David follows this up and says, I understand your point. However, I am not a Christian because I broke bread with Jesus. I've never met him face to face. That requires a level of faith I'm willing to risk taking. But it also takes faith to believe that we landed on the moon or someone's involvement in the 9/11 attacks. Having that level of unwavering faith in the U.S. government is what I'm not willing to risk. History does not favor blind faith in any government. And yeah, I mean, you have to agree, right? Like anybody who is blindly, number one, blindly believing in the government, kind of dumb, especially after what they've done in the last few years. And it's crazy to me coming from someone who owns the Daily Wire, who claims they're about free speech and free thinking and all this other stuff, saying that they just blindly believe the government. And if you don't blindly believe the government, then you're anti-America. Like you're not. I just don't understand, especially after everything that we've gone through in the last few years. It's pretty wild to me that the Daily Wire, who even if they are trying to just generate revenue, would say something like this. It's pretty dumb. Bad business move. But also, Candace Owens goes on to also give her 2 cents on this Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan situation, as well as the Daily Wire meltdown that is ensuing from Tucker Carlson going on Joe Rogan. And Candace Owens says this: Tucker derangement syndrome is real. It always appeared to us that atomic bombs or no atomic bomb, the Japanese were already on the verge of collapse. General Henry H. Arnold, commanding general of the U.S. Army. Japan was at the moment seeking some way to surrender with minimum loss of face. It wasn't necessary to hit them with that awful thing, says Dwight D. Eisenhower. Needless to say, every American has a right to evaluate whether the drastic measure of dropping a nuke on a non-military target in a country that had been on the defense for 2 years, plus negotiating their surrender, was necessary. You may ultimately conclude it was or wasn't, or I guess she means was not, but your right to think critically and express your views is about as American as it gets. I agree. I think we should all be questioning these things. Like even the things that are considered to be 100% fact, like we all agree, I think we should still question them. You know, what's the harm in it? What is the possible harm in questioning certain things that even if they're universally accepted as truth, what's the harm in questioning them? If it truly does hold up, what can possibly bad come out from questioning these things? I don't understand. Candace responds to that and also says, we'll also add here some Christian historical facts. In Nagasaki, the bomb was dropped 300 yards from a Catholic church. Urakami Cathedral. Nagasaki was the epicenter of Japanese Catholicism, home to the second largest cathedral in the East. Church was in session when the bomb was dropped. Of the approximately 12,000 Christians living there at the time, 8,500 were killed, including several dozen parishioners and 2 Catholic priests who were hearing confessions in the cathedral that morning. Damn, man, this is dark. Very few military men were killed. The overwhelming majority of victims were women and children. Yeah, that's really, really dark. And it's great facts brought up by Candace, but yeah, it does kind of put a damper on the whole mood. But I just think it's really embarrassing from the Daily Wire to try to come at Tucker like they did. And that wasn't the only 2 clips that kind of added context to the situation, but it's kind of all that we had time for to play in this video. But Tucker Carlson went off on Joe Rogan and like exposed a ton, exposed the neocons, exposed the fact that a lot of these, you know, congressmen, congresswomen, everybody who's inside the government is basically sold out to either intel agencies or foreign countries or someone. They're all sold out to someone. They're all being blackmailed by someone. So if they don't comply, then, you know, the obviously bad things will happen to them. And Tucker exposed all this. And I don't think the Daily Wire likes that. I think the Daily Wire wants to try to keep Tucker in his place. And people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, they're not going to allow you to keep them in their place, in air quotes. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you're thinking about the Daily Wire's meltdown on this whole situation, about Jeremy Boring just losing his mind once again at something that Tucker Carlson said, and what you think about Candace Owens' response to the situation. I thought it was great. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking. If you did enjoy the video, please leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I hope to see you guys on the next one.